talking about storytelling when it comes to healing. And so I know we each have our stories. Everybody's got stories. I heard one, I had a client today. We were working on some amazing stuff. It was amazing, but it was her story that reinforces how storytelling can help somebody heal. And so I know you've told your story on the podcast a few times. So yeah, that's what I want to do. It's talk about how it helps in healing, and as I'd say, as a shaman for you and a healer for me, how that can help a client.
Right. And I'm
Okay, let's go ahead and do the beginning because that was a really good hook. Welcome to Blue Lightning Healing Meditations. My name is Susie Parker Goins. I'm a channel, so I bring forward your guides so you can connect more easily with them, allowing you to have soul-deep conversations with them whenever you want. I'm also an energy healer, past life explorer, a teacher. My goal is to empower you by teaching you these techniques that you can use on your own. We work together to find and identify the blockages to your growth and release them, inviting you to explore your possibilities. I'm available for phone and virtual sessions, and with Washington opening up, I'll be at many of the in-person events. The best way to contact me is Susie, that's S-U-S-Y, Susie at BlueLightningHealing.com. Visit BlueLightningHealing.com for up-to-date information. Blessings. Welcome to Blue Lightning Healing Meditations. I'm Susie Parker Goins, and I am here again with the fabulous Wyatt Larsen, shaman at large, shaman about town. I don't know.
I don't know about that, Susie.
I know that sounds like a whole bunch of jazz hands. Yeah, I don't see any spirits liking that one at all.
No, they want me to claim my power, but not be egoic.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, fine. So I'll do that later. Okay, I'll do that again. Welcome to Blue Lightning Healing. This is Susie Parker Goins, and I am with my friend Wyatt Larsen, who is a shaman. And over the course of the past, I don't know, week or so, and it came up in an online event that storytelling is an important part of healing. That's when I texted or messaged Wyatt and said, you need to do the podcast with me on this. And so he has agreed. So welcome, Wyatt. Tell us all about yourself.
Thank you, Susie. First off, thank you for having me back on here. It's always a pleasure. I am Wyatt with the Wildwood Hollow. I am a shamanism practitioner using ancient and modern techniques to be able to help clients move forward in their path of healing. Storytelling is literally in everything. From the stories and the worlds that we create in our heads, the movies. My dog is running around.
We're talking about storytelling. And
Right.
I know it is, well, I mean, that's how we get information passed on is through storytellings, the parables. The Sermon on the Mount was one great big story time. And it conveys lessons, and I don't think how we can get away from storytelling as part of the fabric of our lives. But as far as a healing tool, how do you, Wyatt, as a shaman, see telling one story as being crucial, pivotal, or part of the healing process?
I know we've talked about it before in the past, the weight of words and how they can affect someone.
Yeah.
In a healing and the healing process, so back up a little bit, my teachers, when they were training me, they told us the importance of the healing story. And the healing story is the story that you told to the client about what occurred during the healing session. So the healing story itself, really, or any storytelling that occurs, can be immensely impactful. Even within our fantasy stories, books, movies, there's a study a little bit ago that even though fictional characters, they're fictional, but our relationship to them are real.
Yeah.
It can be intensely profound or intensely harmful, depending on what occurs in this story and how the author tells the story. I grew very attached to some characters in a story recently, and it got very very intense for me. And there's a lot of lessons that I learned from these characters. And even though they're played by very real people, they were characters of their own, you know.
Okay, so you're talking specifically about the Critical Role
I am, and
experience.
I know we hadn't talked about it on your podcast yet, so I was kind of avoiding that.
No, we don't have to, but when you told me that, first off, I went, "Oh, you're cooler because you like Critical Role, and oh, and you're even achieving higher levels of cool by saying you're a DM." And I feel there is a deep connection because I love looking at behind the scenes, sort of
Hmm.
those documentaries, the making of things, and so I've been eating up those Crit Role stories. And this is not a sponsored podcast at all. We just truly loves Critical Role and
Yes.
knowing the story behind the story. And now we're getting the story of a new story, but it has grown beyond a bunch of friends hanging out every Thursday and playing a game. This has been they have seen each other through so much, and it has been acted out. It has been processed in the course of the game of the story. And that's what impacted me when you were talking about how you had identified so closely with them during your own grieving process.
Right. I guess since we're going there, I'll tell a little bit
Uh,
about it too.
If you want to, if you don't, through your own process, and it's I don't know. Do you want to go there? We've
It can
looked
be
at it
relevant.
Okay, if it's not, we can move on. I'm okay.
Oh no, no. It can be very relevant, and people can get a sense of how stories can really affect them too,
Okay.
based off of my own story.
Because when I tell my story, about my cancer experience, it's a different kind of demon I was facing there. And I use
Right.
it as the foundations, like this is how I know about this sort of thing. This is my personal experience. And so therefore I use that to help I don't think level the playing field, but to give somebody an insight into my path on my process
Mhm.
there too. So
Mhm.
I had to deal with the family history we have with cancer, my mother and my sister. And oh, and then there's my aunt who had a spinal tumor for 10 years and was in a wheelchair and all that. So, and some people are like, wow, other people cry. And that's not the point to make them cry or to put me up on a pedestal. It's like, no, see, healing can happen and it happens at different levels at different places
Yeah.
and from amazing sources. And that for me is what struck me as so poignant with your process is that this D&D game, it was an incredible catalyst for you.
It really was, and you kind of hit it right on the nose too. That everyone's healing story is going to be very unique to them. Mine so happens to be a story woven within a fictional story,
Yeah.
at least for myself. And healing, like you said, can be found in so many different places and so many different varieties and paths and ways to do it. Storytelling itself, whether it's been Dungeons and Dragons or books or movies, whatever, storytelling itself has been around for eons, just like music. They kind of partnered together. A song is a story put to a beat, really.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And within shamanic cultures, the elders usually are these storytellers. They're the teachers. They pass on the information through oral history, through stories.
Yeah.
And how do you understand something? It's through a story that your parents told you, or grandparents, or if you saw it online. Even in an article, they sometimes weave certain words into the article itself to create imagery in your mind, and that's what a story is.
I find that in when I have a client, everybody does that. Well, I do a sort of an informal intake. I don't have a form, but I ask them, how can I help you today? And that frequently opens the door for someone to talk about, well, this is what I'm going through, and this is what I want to know. And that gives me a place to start with when it comes to which guides or what aspect of divine is going to come through to help the client. My meditations don't necessarily have a story to them. There's a path to them. You start here, you go
Mhm.
here, you give up that, you bring in that, and then you come back out. Does a journey, I don't know if I've ever really journeyed with you. I don't know if there is a story behind that. If there is a story that's woven into your journeying.
Not really. When I do my own journeys, sometimes they will create a story, which in spirit talk is a metaphor.
Yeah, yeah,
As we all know at this point, spirits love to talk in their metaphors, right?
yeah, yeah.
But it's, I guess, the way that I perceive it isn't so much a story, it's how I tell it after to whoever I'm journeying for. If I came across a fox and the fox was dancing, and I saw it was around a bonfire with wooded area and this fox became the stars, there's definitely a story and metaphor within this journey that I experienced that I'm now telling the client. And that symbology might have meaning or might create its own story for the client.
So there's the experience, and then there's the story of the experience. I feel that the story allows the one who is doing the healing, who has the healing happening, it allows them a framework in which to process the information, because my guides seldom come through with like a clipboard and cat's eye glasses and a pen just going, so this is what you need to do, this and this and this and this. They will take me or take anyone along this path so that it is in the retelling that the healing happens. Storytelling, I find that as I tell a story, I craft stories and I usually have a punchline, but there are times where that being able to tell my story has, we talked about scarring, emotional and physical scarring in the shadow work episodes. And so I feel that as I tell my story, it reminds me of where I've been. It integrates it a little bit more, kind
Mm-hmm.
of healing it a little bit more. I don't feel like, and even then in the retelling, I still find I still have those revelations like, oh, that's his job. Of course, he's not emotionally invested because working in that industry, working in the cancer industry, oh my gosh, you would have to
Yeah.
have your own personal therapist walking along with you if you became that attached to it. It's in the telling of one's own story, whether it's heard or not. Because I am notorious for replaying scenarios in my head, and sometimes I will change that story. And that was the phrase I use throughout my cancer experiences. I have to change the end of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a crucial tool. So storytelling for you, I know you've been quite open with this podcast on your own personal experience. Has that helped you in any way? I know it's a rather, I would like to think this is a really public forum, but has it helped you any further, any more in your process?
Storytelling?
Uh-huh. Or maybe telling your particular story or storytelling in general.
I have to say yes. It always does. In very, very interesting ways. So, storytelling allows us to touch onto topics in a safe space that we have trauma from or that we experience pain around. You know, that's why D&D is so cathartic, is we're able to enter
Yeah.
into the body of a character to touch trauma or pain or guilt, grief, whatever we're going through, to touch that wound in a safe space as a character that is outside of our day-to-day persona.
And frequently those characters are so empowered, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
with magic or with these special weapons or tools.
Yeah, yeah. So being a DM myself, I'm experiencing this with my own players. A lot of them, one of my players, his character is going through a realization that his entire past has been decimated by a war that he wasn't present for. They had entered into the Feywilds for 12 days and came back, and a year had passed. And during this time, a war occurred, and his kind of hometown was kind of decimated. But in this area that he was being abused and whatnot by this monastery that he was a part of. He's a monk. And so he is part of this monastery. And now a character from the past who doesn't like him is now hunting him down. And he's having to deal with the pain of losing his friends and not really realizing the damage that the war had really had on it. And then now having to deal with an old mentor that no longer or never really liked him. In addition to that, my friend is also going through some interesting experiences in this life that he's using and allowing his character to feel into. And so it's really interesting to see my own character, or my own characters, my own players experience this, even though
Yeah.
like I experienced a form of it about a year ago.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah. Well, we used D&D while I was sick. We would gather either one place or another, and I didn't, well, there could have been times. My character Isus was a dwarf rogue who didn't understand what rogue meant. So I would get caught up with my friend who was, what was it? She was aligned lawful good and I was neutral. And so there were times it would just be like, hey, yeah, I'm killing this. I'm good. I'm going to stay here. And then we find out that I missed an opportunity to go ransack someplace. I was like, oh, I didn't know that's what I could do. Oops. But it
Oh,
was, yeah, how many magical items? But during the course of it, it was having people come, having people see me for who I was at that time. So there were times I would phase out, I would take a nap left and right, and they were all okay with it. They would just talk quietly, and the game pretty much stopped until I decided to wake up. And
hmm.
it was just a group of friends who were hanging out and supporting me. It would, I don't know if it normalized the situation. I think it did, but there wasn't any fear surrounding it, and it was a game I enjoyed. So that for me, I was still separate from the game, and we still had fun with the game, but I didn't have to process what was going on for me. It wasn't. I didn't use that as a tool. But now we can tell stories about it, and I can remember how much fun we had. Like we were
Mhm.
in this cave that had a whole bunch of undead there, and it wasn't until like, I don't know, 30 minutes into this encounter, we're all going, "Oh my gosh, we're all going to die. Holy crap." And my friend Karen pulls out this sheet of paper that said our base was a bakery, and she said, "Ah, muffins from the skin of the undead." It was then that we all went, "Here, have it, have it, have it," and we got through it. But it's that sort of a story that stuck with me more, as opposed to hearing somebody who's had their gaming day and they tell me, "Oh yeah, I was big and I threw this horse at the bad guys and blah 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 blah." And so it was a different
Mhm.
impact on me. I don't think I needed to process the experience. I just had, it was more important for me for the in real life situation. So when it comes to being a healer and using stories there, what's the best way for one to hold space for the storyteller?
Mm, for the storyteller, so as a healer, you are the storyteller. And when
Oh,
you perform a healing for a client, it is important for the client to listen with open ears and open heart, of course, because this healing is, excuse me, the story that you are listening to from the healer slash storyteller is the story of how you are healed. Um, Many times I won't say like, oh, I removed this inky black goop from your heart, but I'll say, a negative energy was released from this heart that you no longer need. And then if they want to say like, oh, what did it look like, then I can get into it. But
okay.
it's the words and how it is. And then when it comes to the symbolism of the power animal that I brought back for a client, what does the power animal mean to you? A hawk to one person is different to another person.
Right.
They portray very different powers, if you will. So when you're listening to it in that aspect, have an open heart and open mind. Now, as the healer listening to the client as a storyteller, again, have an open heart and open ears, because this is the story that you are about to reweave, if you will.
This is a
This is the
story
story that you're.
you're stepping into.
Yep.
Like like
Exactly.
there's no dice involved, but you're still stepping into their quest.
You're stepping
Okay.
into their quest. I have talked about uh, the Norse side of magic and Sealer, as I've talked about it before, where there is the Veerd, which is the tapestry of life and experience and fate and destiny. And then you have the Orlog, and the Orlog is your own personal string that weaves and attaches to everyone else to create this tapestry. So every single Orlog or every single string is a single person. Now, when you come across and you cross paths with another person as a healer, you're able to snag and reweave their story to create a better story for their future, to create a better healing. So you're literally rewriting the weave for this person.
Yeah.
And that is what seether or magic is. That's what healing is you're rewriting their story and allowing them to take hold of that and to become that golden thread to where they're able to reweave and relearn and re-empower themselves for something much greater in the future.
In my own mind, I'm like, well, no, I won't say that, but I well, I want to cover like how we can be heroes in our own story. But there are times where you don't feel heroic, but sometimes heroism is just breathing that next breath or getting through that emotion or just getting up out of bed. I think realizing that we are heroes in our own story, that we are also the ones that we are saving. When we incorporate that into our own stories to see how far we've come, I encourage clients to look to see, where were you 6 years ago? Where were you then? And now, where are you now? And then I work with them to see their ideal self. What do you see as your ideal self, your best self? And then there are those conversations in which you talk to that future version of yourself to find it out. So that's a way to read your own story, to experience your own story. I know I have clients who also like to see the end of the story right now. They kind of want to skip that middle part.
Yep.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I rarely ever get my cards or hand read for this reason, because it takes me out of the present. And in the present, we have that's where power is found. And so a lot of people are like, oh, I just want to skip this and move on to when I'm already there. Oh, okay, how are you going to get there? What is the story? What is between now and then? You know, you have many different days, many different hours, many different seconds, each with a story of their own, and you're skipping out on the power in that. But I do have to say, you know, back when I was in grade school, which really wasn't that long ago, honestly.
Yeah, rub it in.
And I'm 25 and I have a healing practice.
I'm impressed.
Time and age means nothing. When I was in grade school, I would wish and wish and wish. Like, oh, I wish I was an adult. Oh, I wish I had moved out of the house. Oh, I wish this. I wish that. I wish I was a senior, blah, blah. You know, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. But that wishing took me out of the present. It took me out of what I was experiencing and what I wanted to experience. And now I sit here, I'm like, wow, that was a lot of fun. I wish I could experience that again. Go back and experience it one more time. And then that also brings me out of the present because it puts me in the past and wishing about going back to the past. So the downside of trying to move in either direction when you should just be staying right here.
Being in the present, I know, is most important because you can see those moments. But when the present is so hard, when one is in such pain, I can't help but think there is some benefit to know that something happens and that understanding we all create our own reality, and that where we send our thoughts, that's where the energy goes. And not to blow sunshine up anybody's dress, pants, skirt, whatever, not to blow sunshine up anything, but to give someone something to hold on to, some goal, because goals are what help you. It's frequently you say, yeah, this is where you want to be, but it's how you get there. That's your choice.
Right.
And it's making it hard or making it or easy or questioning everything. I have folks, I've got the t-shirt that says, no, wait, let me overthink this. That certainly takes one out of the present so that you can't make those choices. What is the power of the present that keeps you here so much? What is that power? They're throwing the questions at me, so it's like, let's ask Wyatt.
I think it's different for everyone. My own power I find within stories and storytelling and costuming and my healing practice and getting creative, painting, everything else. You know, that's where my power is. But for some people, like my mom, she's very mathematical minded. She finds her power in math and numbers and seeing God and the universe through the eyes of math. And it's a very interesting way to look at it because I'm not mathematical by any means.
There is that
Uh,
elegance to it, that divine elegance. I know
mhm,
scientists love, or some people love to say that science doesn't recognize God or whatever, but there is that elegance. I think that might be the power of the present, is to see that higher power, whatever, however that manifests to you, whether it is a pantheon or the
mhm,
Christ consciousness or divine feminine or a fire or a plant or just an elegant mathematical equation. It's finding that piece of that glimmer of divine coming at you. But you've got to be in this moment. You can't be thinking about,
mhm,
I need to do the laundry. Holy moly, it's raining. I need to close the car windows, blah, or pull in laundry. That is, I think, the power of the present, is being able to see those glimmers, whether it's hope or divine or the coherency of existence in that moment. You can tell the stories about this is you as a child, or this was you as you're old, or whatever, which kind of gives you those selvage edges on your tapestry of life, if you will. If
yep.
that's is that an adequate metaphor? Okay,
I can see it that way. Yeah.
okay, okay.
And
So,
I really like that, finding the power in the present moment is the divine and your connection to it, no matter how that spark may manifest.
uh
I really like that. That's a good way of putting it.
so it's in telling the story that we find our path, we get to see where we've been, and then we can write our own stories. Fictionalized characters can take on those traits that we wish we had, and we can step into it. How many stories have been written, like The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, or oh, that's the only one that comes to mind. It's somebody who uses their imagination to create alternate realities in the course of the story. Usually it's used for a sense of humor, for the comedic timing, but we could create those stories for ourselves and live them. I I have a lot of fun providing my own background music, my own soundtrack when I'm like driving along. Da na 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 na. Will she make it through traffic and all that? So being our own hero, I think that's important, that we have that trust in ourselves and in believing that we are able to succeed or to get through whatever scenarios we put ourselves through.
Right. I so I have a few different topics I want to touch on actually that you just talked about, but
Cool.
the let's just stick with the first one. Heroes aren't made heroes. They are forged with the pain that they have to go through before they reach that. We are the heroes of our own story, no matter how we're experiencing it, no matter how hard it is. Even when we're in our disempowered state, how many heroes, story wise, whether it's in comics or D&D or movies or whatnot, how many heroes have sat there at the bar with a shot of whiskey or are crying on the sideline or, whatever, trying to dissociate. And then someone comes and picks them up, gives them some grand piece of advice, and then their life starts to turn around. They have to find that path. And your own path isn't just going to randomly come about, or you're not going to come out of a womb as a healer on your own, or hero on your own.
Yeah,
You have to find that path. You have to get to it and be forged into it.
I like that.
Yeah.
Heroes aren't always made on their own. Sometimes it takes another hero to come along, somebody who has had a similar experience, to share
Mm-hmm.
that story. And that's circling back around to what we said at the beginning. I share my story, you share your story, and clients share their stories with us as healers. So it is in that imagery of the tapestry, how we're all threads in the same tapestry of life, how we all come together to make a grander picture, is, I think, one of my favorite images right now, is how we all are stepping together, how we're all weaving and winding our way around. And it does frequently take another hero to tell you, yeah, you can do this. And that's where that storytelling heritage comes from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know within my own experiences, honestly, when I first started my path of shamanism and I was out there with my teachers learning how to journey, this is the first thing that they teach you. You have to journey before you do anything. I was in there and I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to stick with this. I don't know how I feel about it. Is this something I can see myself doing? And then Roxanne, my teacher, she came and sat at the table I was eating lunch at the time, and we got to talking. She was like, I can see you doing this. I can see you in the future doing healing work or shamanism, and you really fit the role. And I sat there and I kind of thought about it, and I was able to reflect on my own life, and I'm like, I kind of do fit the role.
Yeah.
What I experience, what I do, what I've done, it just fits. And so I think when we're relating that to the hero's journey or the hero's story, sometimes you have to be given permission from an external source to be yourself.
Yes.
And sometimes, a lot of people will hate that because they want to be self-empowered, but we're creatures of connection. Sometimes having someone who's outside of you say, I can see you doing this, might help push you towards what you're supposed to be doing.
I like that phrase, I can see you doing it, because what has happened to me is people say, you should do this. You should do that. And I was like, no. And that's all it takes for me to dig in my heels and resist, is somebody telling me what I should do. So I can see you doing this, I think I think that's a more empowering phrase. It still says, yes, I can see one of your optional futures, and I can see you doing it, but I could also see you doing that or that or that. However, it remains your choice.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, now we're getting thunder. Cool. Well, living in Texas, we would have lightning storms.
Oh my
And
gosh, yeah.
oh my God, they were amazing. There was one time I saw one, it was a wagon, it was a wheel, and it just flew out. But,
Oh no.
we don't get many lightning storms up here. We get maybe a shot or two of lightning every so often, but thunder, I haven't heard that for a while. That
Yeah.
thunder that like shakes you out of your bed. Okay.
I miss thunder so much. Colorado would have it 3:00 every day with the thunderstorms, the daily thunderstorms.
Wow.
Yeah, during the summer. Oh, I miss it. We've had thunder 3 times in the past 2 years here in Eugene.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why it's so noteworthy when it does happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. So the hero's journey, that's different than the hero's story, isn't it?
Well, the hero's journey within like creative writing,
Yeah.
you can see it in all the, wow, what are those called? I was gonna say the fates, and that's definitely not
Like the
right.
Greek mythologies. I mean, Iliad and
Yeah,
are you talking those?
I am talking about. I have an epic story, the epics.
Okay. There we go.
Gosh. Anyway, yeah, so like in the Iliad or the Odyssey, those are epic stories, You can see very precisely, the threshold, what occurred to push that character out into the world, and then you see kind of the fall and the climax and then everything else, and you see like what is going on within the hero's journey. We all have those, and we experience them many times through our lives.
Yeah. So how can we be the hero in our own stories? I see that as, it doesn't always have to be you don't always have to be in that horrid situation. You can be your own hero by just in your day-to-day life. So how was I a hero to myself today? Yeah, we're going to have to look at that some other way. But because today was just kind of,
Yeah.
I walked around Everett Community College campus when I could have just walked 50 feet to get where I needed to be. But, and maybe it's the attitude of coming in. It's like, well, I got some steps in today. Okay. I let somebody
Right.
help me. Yeah.
I personally have an issue with being the hero in your own story, and I'm choosing my words very carefully, because, like I said earlier, the hero is not always empowered. They, even within stories, some of them lose their powers and they're not empowered. They're at their lowest, and really, it's maybe how else do I like to put it? Like, what can I do? What's the next right step? What's the next right thing?
Okay.
Pulling from the wonderful story of Frozen 2, was the next right thing. But it's really true. I think the next step, like when you're even in the hard depths of grief or despair, what's the next right thing having the courage to move forward. I
I
think,
think,
like, again, a hero is forged, but you are the hero. You are the protagonist of your own story. It's just taking the steps to get there. So, what's the next right step? What's the next right thing to do? And with each step, you'll get there.
yeah, it's what's the next right step keeps you in the present. It keeps you in the moment so that you're not saying, okay, are we talking a baby step or a giant step or whatever? What's the next thing to do? Because sometimes, there are days when I'm exhausted and I'm trying to walk up a hill. It's like, okay, let me just get to that crack in the pavement. Let me get to that
Mm.
particular fence, or whatever. And I've noticed that I don't have to do that so much, but still, what is that next thing I can do? I think that's particularly useful when one is experiencing some really rough challenge. I've worked with somebody who was really depressed, and I said, okay, what can you do right now? Can you just pick up one cup? How about you just go get that paperwork and we'll look at it. You don't have to do anything with it. Let's just, and stayed with them
Mm.
and staying with yourself as you do things. Because not everybody has got someone they can call or tap on to get you through that. But if you can stay with yourself long enough to say, okay, what's the next thing I can do? What's the next right thing I can do? Doesn't mean you're
Yeah.
exclusively taking care of yourself. You can reach out when you can, but sometimes it just doesn't. Some There have been times when I thought, oh, I didn't think of that. I just
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah. It's
but
it's not easy sometimes
no,
to live this thing that we call life.
but to recognize you're part of a tapestry, you're part of a greater weaving. I am so in love with that we are weaving our way through our lives and telling the story, which harkens back to the fates string, doing the string and the thread of your life, and they'll cut it when they need to or whatever. But it is, I think it is all part of that community that creates this tapestry that we call life.
Hmm. And knowing too that you can, in a tapestry, there's multiple threads. You're not the only tapestry, or excuse me, you're not the only thread in this tapestry. So reaching out is absolutely okay, fine, necessary. If you're having a really, really tough time, I have felt disempowered quite a bit in the past year. It has taught me quite a bit. But the difference of me then and me now is, I got the courage to reach out for help, whether it's to a friend or to a therapist.
Yeah.
Had many great conversations with my therapist.
And
You know,
to
you're
be
never
able to
alone.
pull back to the camera zooms out, if you will, and you can see the whole tapestry, the greater picture of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what I think is going to be happening in the next few months, is that we're all going to go, "Hoy, what a year. What?" And then to be able to pull back and see, "Oh, look, I grew here, I grew there, and I changed that around. And that dynamic, yeah, I didn't need that one anymore." And so to be able to pull out and see the grander picture, but not to live there or to not live in that microcosm, you get to find that balance of where you're at, but remembering you are a thread in this greater tapestry we call life is, well, for me, that's really empowering to think of.
It, I do too. I, I, I don't know. I have this amazing image in my head, and some people reach farther than others, and others just reach their community, and it doesn't matter really because
No.
each one is looped by some thread and it all connects.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so amazing. Hmm.
Okay. Do you have anything else about it? Because this is kind of random, I must admit.
Well, it is, and it's actually bringing forward a lot of topics that we could talk about in the future if we wanted to.
Let me
Um,
know.
there was one thing, and I forgot what it was.
You were talking about the hero not always being empowered. Uh, Not a mentor, but I know mentors are nice, but that person who comes up and says, "Come on, you can do it," whoever that appears to be, whether it's the mentor, the wizard, or the little kid who's drooling on themselves or whatever, but having
Yeah,
somebody support you. What else did we telling
I
your
think I
story?
remember now. So you were talking about and I think we just like glossed over it because you had a
I
different
went a different ways. Yeah. So thanks
I
for
do.
reeling us back in.
Oh, this is an hour ago. That's fine. The What to do when the present moment is too hard. Yeah, you said something along those lines. And then I'm like, oh, well, this is what I did. But I think if the present moment is too hard and you don't want to head towards the future or the past because the power is in the present moment, then shift what you're experiencing in the present moment for a time. So instead of experiencing your pain and only your pain and grief, despair, sadness, whatever it is you're going through, shift to a temporary story, to something that is happening in the current moment. You know, some people like to read, some people like to, D&D is a great thing to do because it's still in the present moment. You don't know what's about to happen in your character's future. You don't know what's going on in the past. You're just immersed into the present moment, but in a different story.
So it's a different layer of the reality.
It is,
different layer.
Take yourself out of the current reality into a different one. Non-ordinary reality. It's not ordinary by any means. And I experience non-ordinary reality when I journey. D&D or storytelling, a different aspect of non-ordinary reality. I think experiencing and shifting.
Yeah. The currently consensus reality will be there, but if you can take yourself out of it, I feel it gives you a different perspective. Those tools available, you can take a moment and get clarity on it.
Yeah.
And then you can dive back in.
Yep. It all remerges at some point. As long as you're not dissociating fully. That's the thing that a lot of people have a hard time with too, is like just dissociating fully and not wanting to understand or deal with the life. And then they create a whole new persona because they can't deal with the grief that the old persona had.
And there's that fear. We've talked about the fear of uncovering. So this is all a part of shadow work. I can see storytelling as being integral to walking the shadow path to get you through that moment so that you can find a different one. So being afraid of the fear, we've talked about how it's sometimes not as bad as you think. Sometimes it is, but it is something that in order for growth to happen, there are sometimes you do need to be in your story.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you don't have to be there alone.
No, nope. Even though, so with a little bit of my background in my story, I was physically alone, but I wasn't alone because when I was going through that grief, I stepped back and I watched Critical Role. And I wove myself into that story. And then I was able to step back into my own role with different eyes. Small adjustments here and there.
Yeah.
And it got me through.
Sometimes a small one is all you need.
Yeah.
To shift it just enough.
Yeah. I was physically alone, but I wasn't alone in my healing.
Yeah, I know I was going through my cancer again, and I think I wasn't immersed in other people's stories. But those times when, say, I was watching, my husband, my daughter, and I would sit on our bed and watch RuPaul's Drag Race or Big Bang Theory. Mm-hmm. And so there was the humor behind that. But it allowed me the moment to do that, the zoom out and see that I had my daughter with me. I was changing the way my story went compared to the way my mother's story was, where we were shut out, but I included the family. And so they got to see me through the process. Yeah, that had its own traumas attached to it. Some of the things they had to experience. It still kept me in that reality in which I could see that this was a healing experience for me, and to have the family included, that was important to me. So there's all sorts of stories that can be told, whether it's one's own story or listening to another story or just a TV story or whatever. And that's all part of the healing when you're able to find a story you connect with.
Yeah. And that's all you really need is that connection.
Well, I think I'm good. Are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, thank you, Wyatt. I really appreciate you coming on. If you could throw at us your contact info again and any plans you have coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, my name is Wyatt Larsen. I'm a shaman with my own business, The Wildwood Hollow. You can find me at thewildwoodhollow.com or shoot me an email at thewildwoodhollow@gmail.com. Yeah, I have wonderful sessions and working with amulets, and I currently have a few different crystals and wands and things up, products that I'm selling, and it's time to let the energy move on. Currently, I came across a little snag with my class for journeying, so that is going to be pushed out a little bit. I don't know when it's going to come out, but I think I'm going to do a in-person class and then record that, and then I'll be able to put that up. So,
Cool. And all those details are going to be at thewildwoodhollow.com. And
correct.
we just did the Crystal Skull Council panel on for MeWe. That
We
was
did.
so cool. And anyone can access that or any of the MeWe online events at joinmeweonline.com. And I know it's on my website. I don't know if you have your
Yep.
calendar events. Okay. So it's on both of our websites and also the MeWe website, which I don't know off the top of my head. Thank you so much. And this is Susie from Blue Lightning Healing. And until next time, blessings. They're not going to see you wave, honey.
All right, bye, everyone. Thank you.